Hey, this is Seth with In Demand Career. I show people how to go from 0 to 60K within a year in digital marketing. And that is exactly what my very special guest today did. Jay, who went from being paid nothing as a public school teacher, and before that being an engineer, to making over 60K within a year of getting into digital marketing. So I'm very excited to talk with Jay and share his story with you. Thanks so much for being here, Jay.
Thanks for having me, Seth.
My pleasure. So let's start off with, what are you doing now? What's your job? Where do you live?
Mhm. Yeah, so right now I'm a paid search manager at an agency based out of Boston, and I'm living just outside of the city in Somerville.
Awesome. And what are you making at your job, and what does your job entail?
Yep, so right now, before I was making a little over 47K. Right now I just got pushed up to 65K. And the way I usually like to describe what I do is explaining to clients 5 times a week that advertising doesn't work like Mad Men. But right now, I'm in the accounts managing campaigns up to 90K monthly budgets, totaling about half a million, and then meeting with clients on a weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly basis with reporting.
That's great. And what kind of clients do you have? What kind of verticals are you in?
So a lot of B2B clients, things like cybersecurity, payment verification, and then a couple of hospitals.
Oh, okay. What kind of ads do hospitals run? Like, I'm curious.
Very specialized ones, like a good chunk of budget goes to primary care, but then a lot of it goes to things like maternity, cardiology, and breast care.
Interesting. So within Boston, there's got to be some competition amongst the hospitals, I guess. So people are
Yeah,
deciding where to go. It's interesting. And that's interesting too, because hospitals have a pretty high, if somebody goes to that hospital, they make a lot of money.
yep.
Um, so it's got to be high clicks. Like, what are the clicks like in that vertical?
Yeah, so it's a lot of clicks, but I'd say on a good week, you'll get about 100 clicks for a specialized service. But really, what they're trying to focus on is engagement as opposed to conversions.
Engagement. And sorry, guys, just I don't usually get right into the nitty gritty of it, but this is me. Engagement means people actually clicking and just they want people to actually engage, like to interact with the ad. And conversion is when you actually make a sale or get somebody to put in their email address. So you're saying that with hospitals, they want engagement like branding. They just want
Yeah,
exposure.
they want exposure, and they're realizing that it's going to be very rare that someone's going to click an ad and then go straight to booking an appointment. So they really just want to get people on their site and keep them there so that their name stays in a user's head.
In their head. That's very interesting because you're right. Hospital is not necessary unless it's the emergency room, like help. I've been
Right.
stabbed, I need help. I mean, and they're probably not going to Google it. They'll just dial 911. But yeah, that's a very interesting insight. So there's so many different types of customers and different approaches in this field, which is another reason why it's so in demand. So let's take people back through your journey. Oh, and again, you did. Sorry, guys, it's morning here for me. Sometimes I forget what I'm asking. So you've told us what you're making and what you're doing, and now let's take you back to take people back to when you started the course and what you were doing at that point. So when did you take the course?
So I took the course at the end of the summer in 2019, and then I got my first job a couple months after that.
That's great. And that first job was paying you.
47.5K.
Okay, that's fantastic, especially for an entry level position with no previous experience. And what was it like getting that first job? What was it like doing the application and the interview, considering you didn't have any previous experience?
Yeah, honestly, what was crazy about it is kind of dialing back to engineering where it felt super competitive. So I had applied to about 150 jobs in engineering and gotten interviews for about three or four. And then after I'd taken the course, I sent out probably 20 applications in a week and then got a dozen interviews out of that. So just the demand and how, I guess, technical term is the conversion rate based on applications is just super high, and a lot more than I expected, especially even transparent on my resume about how little experience I had.
That's right, guys. That's what I teach. I mean, yeah, you follow the resume template with the way I show you. You're not going to lie about how many years experience you have. They're going to see that you've only been doing it for a month or two, but they still need you. They still need the help. So
Mhm.
by the way, and also it's an incredible response rate. It varies, from industry to industry. And I always tell my students, if you're not going to hear back from everybody, and you shouldn't expect to, but whether you got 20% or even 10% sounds better than in engineering, where your response rate was out of 150 to hear 3. You're the math guy.
Yeah.
What is that? That's like 1 or 2%.
Yeah. About 2.5%.
2.5%. Tell me about what happened next as far as the interviews go. Like, how did you end up, how did the interviews go? Again, considering we're coming into this so fresh.
Yeah. So it was, I had, 10 to 12 interviews, and a lot of them went very similarly. They were happy to hear that I could speak the same language as them. Even just being able to talk to match types was put me ahead of so many other people in the interview process. And a big thing there was that, trying to figure out how to say this. Yeah, just kind of tying it back to being able to speak the same language. One of the things that hindered me in the interview process, though, was they did send out a skills assessment test, which was more so Excel based, but two of them ended up translating into in-person interviews, which was, again, crazy to see because I didn't have really any hands-on experience in the field.
That's awesome, man. And so this speaks to a few good points. Number one, I am actually in the process of adding more Excel training. But as I've said, I say in the beginning of that training, all these interviews, all these testimonials, I can't think of one student who got a job because of Excel skills.
Mhm.
You can easily get hired without them. It just is a feather in your cap, and it can be very helpful. And it's not that difficult to learn. And I love the fact that, even though you didn't have those, you still got these 2 in-person interviews. So how did those interviews go?
Yeah, those honestly went really great because I feel like once you get past the just the screening phase of do you meet X, Y, and Z qualifications, it really just boils down to a regular conversation. So in the job that I did end up getting, I was there for about an hour and a half, and most of the interview was just talking about barbecuing. I think we spent probably about 15 minutes actually talking about technical things, but it was just, are you a good fit for the team personality wise? Yes or no?
Absolutely, guys. And obviously I want you guys to be prepared. I want you to be able to speak the language, but that is what happens in a lot of these interviews because they do need people who can just speak the language. That's what you said to me. Like, did they ask you like a ton of tough questions? I guess I could ask you.
Not really. The biggest thing was just being able to outline your strategy of how do you do your keyword research? What's your approach to building a campaign? Do you have an optimization strategy? And just gauging how much you really know and being able to speak to it.
That's it. You said it perfectly. It's a combination. I don't want you to just throw you into a job interview and it's just about like your personality. That's not the case. And I also don't want you spending a year getting super analytical and granular about these skills. You just have to have that basic understanding and then communicate it. And I love how you told me a minute ago, you said like just knowing what match types are puts you ahead of
Yeah.
people. You guys really pay attention to that. I say this again and again, especially whether you're considering the course or you're in my course and maybe you feel intimidated or like, oh God, it's so daunting to apply. People do not know this. There's a video in my course from Nick Schulander, who was just talking about, he's a student of mine for 2 years ago. He's freelancing. He's just seeing how bad other
Mhm.
digital marketers are and how uninformed people are. And you can stand out if you're informed.
Yeah, it really doesn't take much. And actually, I was talking to the rest of my team after I'd gotten hired. And the big thing after my interview was the head of operations who had interviewed me about that went around to the rest of the team saying, all right, I found this guy. He knows his match types. We're definitely hiring him next week. And it was just really that simple, just being able to know really the basics and how to talk about it and have a conversation about it.
That's awesome, man. And you said it really well. And it's still like that, guys. In fact, now there's over 80,000 digital marketing jobs in the US. I've never seen that many. And there are going to be agencies like, this is what I tell my students, like there are agencies like Sear Interactive. Billy Bravo is one of my students there. They're super data driven, and they'll like say you have to have like this, you have to know how to do these formulas in Excel the day you're hired. There are agencies like that. And that's probably not where you're going to get hired. But there's like 5,500 agencies in the United States on top of all the private companies. That's why there's 80,000 jobs. And there's plenty of them like Jay's agency out there. Still, it's not like in the last year, suddenly the colleges caught up and we're like, oh, let's teach the actual hands-on work of digital marketing. So day one, you get hired. You've only done work on your own accounts and what I've taught you in the course. What did they start you off at the first day on your job?
Yeah, so the very first thing was just running me through some ad copy, but really they just taught me ground zero paid search because they hadn't seen any hands-on work from me. And a couple other people on my team didn't know exactly how much experience I had. So really the first day into the first month was purely just teaching me the ropes of paid search and getting to actually play around in the platform.
Oh, so they really taught you like from the ground up.
Yeah. So it was, do you know how, like, it was really an interview of, do you know the basics of it, / do you know how to learn this?
Do you know how to learn this? That's perfect. Now, did you actually in the course, did you run a campaign yourself? You did the spreadsheet, you told me, but did you run a campaign?
So I did the spreadsheet. I didn't end up running any paid search ads. I just went straight into applying for jobs.
That's another good tip for my guys. Like I tell you, like, I really do want you to get your hands on like one campaign, but like some people overcomplicate that and they think they have to run like a bunch of campaigns or something else.
Mm-hmm.
No, you just have to do the spreadsheet. And I think it's good to get your hands on one account so that you feel comfortable and you're like literally just getting in there, you feel more comfortable. But and then how soon did they put you on client accounts and how much were you managing?
So they put me onto client accounts, or I started out being kind of a secondary on client accounts. So everything that I did got QA'd before it was launched. But within the first month and a half, I was working on $10,000 to $15,000 budgets.
There you go, guys. From zero.
And it was really, it was really just low maintenance things too. Very low touch point type accounts, and it was very hard to make a mistake on any of those.
There's a lot of companies like that too. I mean, listen, if you go interview for a job and they're like, our client is like the top, I don't know, dog food company in the country, and we're spending $10 million a day, and you have to make sure this performs, you're not going to get that as an entry level job. But like at my first agency, it was the same thing. It was 30 accounts, $100,000 a month in ad spend. It was very low maintenance stuff. Like, and jobs vary. Some other places are going to want you to create accounts from scratch. But again, I teach you how to do that, and you'll get support. It varies, but there are, for anyone who's worried about spending other people's money, you can hear was this stressful for you? How was it for you?
There was a little bit of anxiety at first, but then kind of the idea clicked of, okay, these people are paying me to spend their money. Like, I'm not trying to save it. I'm trying to use it to make them more money.
That's a great insight, man. I think that's brilliant. I have to like repeat that because it's true. Most of us, even myself, like there is a natural tendency to want to save money. Like we all do. We like coupons. We all like discounts and stuff. And especially if you never paid money on ads. I even had to run into this myself when I run my own ads, is you feel weird about spending money on advertising. It's just almost like we're so programmed to try to get things for free. And you're worried if you don't see results within like a nanosecond. But then you forget, this is how people make money. They have to spend it to get out there to people. And there's an experimentation and an adjustment process. So you should feel good about spending money. And the best clients, what do my students always say? The best clients are the ones who actually spend more and are comfortable spending more money. So that's a really good insight.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm finding that a lot of my higher budget accounts are clients who really are very low touch with it. It's just they trust your opinion as the expert. They're saying, okay, how can we give you more money to expand this? There's never this shortage mindset. There's always room to grow, and they're excited for it.
That's awesome. Versus, and how are the lower? I mean, not to knock anyone who's got a smaller
Yeah,
budget, but what's the difference?
I think a lot of the lower budget accounts kind of have that shortage mindset of this business is, my child, and I need to spend every dollar very carefully. So there's a lot more interaction. And I think honestly, it's a little stressful working with them, but they're huge learning points of being able to understand every detail of what goes on in the account, and just being able to like. I found that when I started working some of those lower accounts, it grew my knowledge of paid search exponentially.
That's great. That's great, man. That's really good. So, yeah, I mean, learning, you get value every day you're on one of these entry level jobs, and then and then how are you able to leverage up to this new job?
Yeah, it was really being able to work on a lot of those larger budgets and also being based out of Boston. I was fortunate enough to be at an agency that had a lot of larger brand names. So getting to even just name drop those in interviews put me so far ahead. And I feel like that's can be the case wherever you go, because if you're in New York, there's whatever else is out there. In Boston, there's a lot of nonprofit organizations, and a lot of hospitals. And same idea of just being able to speak to how well you know paid search and then just take it to the next level. I feel like in my first interview, it was going up against people who had absolute zero knowledge of it and not much room to learn it. Going into my second interview is where all the people who knew paid search 101 were the people I was going against. So I was always just that one step ahead of them. And that just derived from learning the basics through a course.
Yeah. Well, in your second interview, you got your experience under your belt and you're up against other people that have more experience. And it sounds like you had some really great experience. I mean, that's the whole point of my whole pitch on 60K in a year, because you needed that time to month after month of managing accounts makes you a good candidate to get one of these higher paying jobs.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The
So
other thing that I think was very beneficial out of this was having that transparency of switching fields. I think really shows that level of ambition that you are like you're essentially self-taught and you have this personal desire to learn something new. And I think that goes a long way in the interview process.
that's great. I have some students now who are engineers, and they're getting into the interview process. And but it works. Just so you guys are clear, it works in a big city, whether you're in Boston or New York, especially now with everything being remote. I got people in South and North Dakota working on giant brands too, or Ohio. You don't have to be based in these big cities, and you can be changing careers. You can be just starting out. So let's go back just a little bit. I usually do this a little early in the interview, but let's just talk about your background just a little bit so people can get a sense of
Sure.
where you came from. So you told me that you were a chemical engineer out of college. And can you tell us about your job and what you were actually doing there?
Sure. So I got my degree in chemical engineering, and my first job was in research and development. And without exaggeration, my role was literally to watch paint dry for 9 hours a day. I'd go in at 6 a.m. and set up a polymer and mix it with a powder, and then lather it onto something and quite literally watch it dry and then test it. And that was my day for 6 months.
Wow. I don't even, I normally would ask a follow-up question, but I don't even want to because it sounds literally watching paint dry. That sounds really
Yeah.
terrible. I like
Day one and day two, I was like, oh, wow, this is exhilarating in, super sarcastic tone. And then after doing it for a month, I was like, wow, this is literally my life.
that. Oh my God. And so at that point, did you feel like you had a future in chemical engineering?
No, not at all. I was like, okay, I'm making decent money right now. It's at the time I was making 52,000 a year. So the money it wasn't bad, but just there was no fulfillment in it. I couldn't see any direct results of what I was doing, and it was really hard to just kind of stand out and find any sense of like joy or excitement in what I was doing.
That's that's It's terrible, man. I mean, but I'm glad that you saw that very early. Some people would have just pushed through it or, ignored it. And then what did you do after that? You left that job, and what were you doing after that?
Yeah, so shortly after that, I actually ended up going to speak at an alumni event at my old high school and ended up becoming a high school teacher for 6 months after that, where I started by teaching chemistry and then I got moved into the math department. So the job itself was super exciting, super fulfilling, but it was 65 hours a week at a little over $400 a week. So beans and rice 5 to 7 times a week became a little redundant.
Wow. And it's kind of crazy. You get these two extremes. You got a job that pays decent for a recent college grad. I mean, 50K for someone out of college is not bad at all, considering most college grads are making minimum wage. But it's terrible and like soul sucking. Then you find this fulfilling job in teaching that they won't pay you anything
Yep.
near a livable wage, which is why I think teaching in the public school system is a terrible idea. If you want to teach online like I do, it's much better and more fulfilling. Or at least you can support yourself. But those are two extremes. And now, how work-life balance and fulfillment, how does this new career fit into that compared to the other two?
Yeah, so this new career, I get to full on see the direct results of my work and much quicker than I could in research and development, where something on that end would take several years to really see anything. Whereas here, I can set something up and then in the next couple of weeks or even a month or two, you can really start to see uh, what your work is doing. Like I took on a client at the beginning of January where they were just in this starvation mode of being able to get leads. And now they're at 3 times their best month ever. And it's only been a month and a half since I took them on. So just being able to see how much good you can do for a business has been super rewarding. And also, it's a kind of job where, yeah, it's stressful at times, and there's days where I have to work late or start early, but it's the kind of job where I don't really mind staying late. Um, and it's liberating to be able to say that.
I'm glad, man. That's awesome. I felt the same way when I got into this field because I had come from a life of, I had a college degree. I had been doing like temp work, office work, waiting tables, all these just jobs where you like a computer could do your job, like a human doesn't have to do this. But, and there is a lot of analysis, but you're still engaged with this, work. You're seeing results. You get to be a little bit creative. And I remember that same thing. Like when I used to work at these other jobs, I remember just dreading going to work and just getting so ready to leave when it was the end of the day. And when I had my in-house job or my agency job, I'd be like, I'd have to force myself to go home because I'm like in it. I'm like working on something.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got promoted because I had that enthusiasm for what I was doing. So I'm glad that you have that same experience. Sounds like night and day from when you were doing those other jobs.
Completely. It's like taking the good parts of both of them, the salary and the fulfillment, putting them together.
Yeah, and you're making more. I'm positive you're making more in this job than you would have if you stayed with chemical engineering for a
Yeah,
year. Right?
absolutely.
That's awesome. And also, we saved you from a life of being like in like Walter White in Breaking Bad. I had
Yeah.
that. Like you're teaching chemistry, making no money, and then you end up like doing something dastardly to support yourself. But no, what if Walter White had just found digital marketing? He would have gotten involved with the blue stuff. So that's an inside joke for any Breaking Bad fans out there. Anyway, I might have to cut that out because it may not compute with everybody. Let me see. Okay, so this is where I cut up the interviews. But we've got
Yeah.
through this whole thing pretty organically. That's pretty great. Let me think. Okay, Jay. So this is really great. Thanks so much for sharing your story. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the course or advice to people watching the video?
Biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone watching the video or taking the course right now is definitely don't wait to start getting your foot in the door. Like, even if you're only halfway through right now, start applying to jobs and just be able to speak to it because you never know. you might be able to get your first offer before you even get to the end of the course. And if they ask you a question you don't know, so what? That's just one more experience that you have over your last one.
That's a great attitude, man. I'm trying to encourage people to do that. Myself, like I said, I want you to at least watch the videos. You would want them to at least watch the videos though, right? Before they start applying.
Absolutely. Especially towards the end, just being able to understand how it all comes back together.
Yeah, you want to have the full picture of how everything fits together in the course and how all the different, SEO, PPC, how everything works together. But again, you don't have to spend months and months and months
Right. Just
generating
that
your.
paralysis by analysis really slows a lot of people down.
Absolutely. So that's very inspiring. Anyway, so thank you, Jay. Thank you for sharing your story with us and that advice. That's very good advice. And we'll definitely keep in touch. I'll definitely want to see where you are in a year or two. I'm sure you will have scaled up since then.
Thank you.